Hello, and welcome to the DM's Book Club, a weekly book club podcast where we talk about some Dungeons & Dragons and discuss how we might include them in our role-playing campaigns. Welcome to 2024, officially for us, although there's going to be a couple of episodes where you're like, wait, you guys sound like you were in from last year. But my name is Fiona, and with me, as always, is my wonderful co-host, Hamilton, Kickstarter extraordinaire.
Oh, jeez.
Hey, you always start with like a tabletop rising star, so now I get to go Kickstarter rising moneymaker.
Moneymaker. Oh, we'll see. I think a lot of that money is going to go into printing and shipping.
Demon Slayer is out on Kickstarter.
When will this be going out, this episode?
Probably after the Kickstarter, but it's nice to...
Yeah, it goes on for like another 29 days, but I'm assuming going on what we're doing.
I will put a link in the show notes anyway so people can see it.
There'll be late backing.
I was going to say, there must be late backing at this rate. You're looking at all these things. But how are you? It's been a couple of weeks since we've actually done this. So
yes, it has been. It has been a while. It's been since 2023.
I saw you last year, etc.
Yeah, exactly. The thing I was thinking is that this is the first time we can now, because we've already been caught out, haven't we, by the fact that episodes have gone out.
We did a wonderful batch recording, and then Wizards
went and became Grinch. Super Grinch, and we didn't get to comment on that at all, did we? So maybe, I don't know, if we need to...
Yeah, let's do a quick thing about it. So so at the end of 2023, Wizards of the Coast Hasbro announced that there's going to be a lot of layoffs because of various predictions not making sense or not making as much money, even though D&D is one of the most profitable products they have.
Wizards is their most profitable part of it.
Yeah. So unfortunately, across Magic the Gathering and Wizards, there's been over 1,000 layoffs of some very notable, influential sort of writers and game designers and artists, which, to be honest, fucking sucks.
Yeah. And it really sucks more when, most of the thing is the most profitable bit is Wizards. Oh, but we're going to fire you still. And you're like, okay, that doesn't make sense.
And it also is very something that I've getting to grips with myself is that it's a very US culture that you could just be fired with no notice, no nothing. Some states have this at will law so it's supposed to protect you, the worker, that you mean if you want to leave your job, you can do it on that day and there's no consequence for that.
Really?
At the same time though, your employers could also fire you with no reason and not tell you why.
Yeah, the employee protections over in Europe, particularly more, and UK is pretty good as well, is completely different. And you do sit there and go, okay, that's really crazy. I find that so strange. It can be just that you're not protected for 2 or 3 months whilst you try and find another job. Yeah, exactly. And it's just, and to do it weeks before Christmas is just have you seen A Christmas Carol?
Yeah, it's very disheartening as we go into the 50th year of D&D.
Yeah, not a great way to start.
Yeah, and obviously one of our early episodes in this season talked about the Book of Many Things, which obviously then had also its own delays, hopefully at the end of January, but who knows at this rate when it will come out. And also we've got the cool rulebooks coming out this year, but it kind of feels a bit like... It just feels shit. And we've talked about this before last year when we had the OGL stuff, is that it kind of sucks for us because we very much love tabletop RPGs and we love D&D lore. We like looking at it and stuff. And so it kind of feels a kick in the teeth when they just treat it as a cash cow and treat it as a thing rather than something that can be used to help people through therapy, to create stories and to people to be creative again when we're in a world which is always about money, always about the cost of living and stuff.
I play Warhammer, so this is nothing in comparison to who literally this is all about money. But I know what you mean. I totally agree. It is a real shame. But I think the thing that I want to make a note is the people at Wizards and the people who've made these games. And I think that's what makes me sad about it, is that they've worked really hard to make some really cool stuff recently. We mentioned when we were mentioning the Book of Many Things at the beginning of the year, it came out. And particularly something that was just a really great piece of creative design in many ways, because it was taking something very out there and putting it into, and you think, wow, people have put a really great job. We're all talking about it going, this is a really good thing to come out of Wizards of the Coast. They're doing really nice things about talking back to their past, looking forward to the future. And then out of the blue, it's some insert your word of choice here comes along and just makes these sorts of decisions and kind of puts a real tarnish on all their work as well, which is really sad, because I think we should be still celebrating the people that have put all this work in. I think people are. I just think I still think we're right to do that.
On sort of the flip side of this, as we always sort of say, when you consider stuff like Matt Colville's Kickstarter.
Yeah. Talking of Kickstarters doing well, $4.3 million, wasn't it? And because I thought the joke we were saying was like, oh, that OGL stuff, that's all died down. All those people that were making these separate ones, how are they going to do? And then suddenly Wizards go, here's a bone. We'll Hasbro just go and burn the shit down right when they go for their Kickstarter. And it's kind of like, well, that couldn't have been better time for them.
It's interesting because obviously Matt Colville did do so much on D&D. If you go to his YouTube, he talks about how to be a great DM, how to do this.
James Intricasso is part of the team there. And he's, famous for working on Waterdeep Dragon Heist and many other ones at the same time. I don't know if he did Descent into Avernus as well, but
I can't remember off. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Quickly at the credits. Yes, story creators James Intricasso. He was there at that time, so I remember him being a part of it then. So big names and a loss to that company as well, and going out there and making it for themselves. And and hopefully it does mean there's more competition out there, which I always think only helps things, because the more competitions out there, the better everything becomes, so long as it's not a race to a bottom. Have you read anything on how the game functions and stuff like that? Because
I'll be honest, there is a video, which again I'll put into the show notes today, of Matt Colville as an hour-long video describing what the system is. I'll be honest, I'm a bit about it myself, but that's, again, I've yet to dive in properly. But yes, so we're talking about the MCDM's RPG, the Tactical Hero Cinematic Fantasy is what it's described itself as. And the big thing I took away from the video itself was that you always hit. You never miss an attack. That's what I understand from...
Like being a rogue.
Cross it out. It is definitely tactical, just rogues.
Yeah.
There's an interest for it. And also, I do admit, like, obviously, Matt Colville has a massive following, and he's a very charismatic person, as long as has done other amazing Kickstarters as well, along with the Flea Mortals line as well. So time will tell, I guess. And I'll admit, I've not backed it myself, because, again, it didn't seem something that would appeal to me necessarily, but I'll be interested to see what it looks like, what it plays like as well.
Yeah, I'll watch that video. It's just been something on the radar as I see it coming up on Twitter and everywhere.
We're at an interesting point now. We're almost like the same as January 2023, where the OGL stuff and people go, we need to make changes. And now we're back at January 2024, and Wizards are still not great in our books. Then we have this amazing Kickstarter. So maybe more people will get into it.
It's different, isn't it? Again, because I think it's Hasbro. We've got to remember that, isn't it?
Of course, yeah.
That's the thing. It's the beholden to shareholders, which, as we know, is we could get into political and talk, but you're right.
But speaking of corruption, speaking of terrible places, Hamilton, what are we looking at today?
Well, we're looking at what was billed to me, as quick little jaunt into Baldur's Gate Gazetteer.
Yes. So in the sort of release, obviously, of Baldur's Gate 3 of last year, which became incredibly popular, yourself and I, obviously diving straight into it as well, Wizards sort of re-released the Baldur's Gate Gazetteer from Descent into Avernus for free on D&D Beyond. As a sort of like, hey, you want to know more about Baldur's Gate? Try it here. And admittedly, I was like, oh, this is the thing they've just written because of the game. Which shows my lack of knowledge of actually not reading Descent into Avernus. Yeah, so we've done a couple of these primers before. Obviously, we did the Waterdeep primer that we got with Dragon Heist. We've done, obviously, Minx and Boo, which is a sort of a similar idea of like, here's what the towns are like, etc.
Loads of little primers, yeah.
Yeah, and we've seen it as well in like Critical Role's Taldore. We've seen it in Call of the Neverdeep. That sort of like where they've got a little bit of primers about the towns as well. And it is short, but as we discovered, it's very dense. I don't think either of us enjoyed it as much as the Waterdeep primer.
No.
That was definitely my initial thought. As I sort of closed the book, I was like, oh, I sort of a bit of a sigh from my side of it.
Yeah, I got that way about halfway through, and I was like, oh, so these aren't just paragraphs. These are pages of information. And, I feel a bit too minded on it, because when we've talked about all those other ones, I'm like, this is great, give people information, let everyone like take all this, and I think it is good. But I think if I was like, I'm going to be running a game Baldur's Gate as a DM, perfect, this is great, it's got lots of stuff, so much to build upon, some really interesting little places to investigate, people to talk about, to interact with. I love the little dark secrets that we'll talk about at the end.
Yes,
really good things, like great, really cool moments. However, if you're reading it dry, like we are, just to talk about, it's a slog, because it's just like, here's another place. It was like when we were doing our Isgard, felt a bit like that. Isgard, where it was like, and now another place, and here are the same 50 different things in this. It is interesting, but it's not, it's hard when you're not building something from it, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Let's compare it to Dragon Heist Waterdeep in a way. So like with Dragon Heist, obviously it's all contained within Waterdeep. You are not necessarily, what's the term for it being a citizen of Waterdeep is Water Delvians?
Waldavian.
Water Davians, sorry. Yeah. So you're not necessarily that, because it talks about if you come in, all that sort of thing. It always starts like you're in a tavern, etc. From what I understand of Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus, and looking at the character backgrounds as well. So we've got 14 backgrounds and a new background in this Gazetteer, which is like how to ingratiate your character already in Baldur's Gate, which is a great idea. Waterdeep is a very lovely place, I feel, compared to this place. So instantly I'm like, why would I want to be a character that belongs to this place? Because I think it's a very interesting mix of a town that is definitely, there is corruption here. There is piracy, there is smuggling, etc. And it's pretty shit if you are not one of the top tier ranking people of society that lives in the upper city. Ultimately, it feels like the goal of this is to get into the upper city if you're in the lower city or the outer city, etc. And so for me, it's a bit like, we're already being shafted, I guess is the answer. So why, rather than be like welcoming it, I mean, it does talk about it like it is diverse, it is like, but people are out for themselves.
It's a much more cutthroat place.
Yes, exactly. People are looking out for themselves, keeping care of their own skin, and even banding up together with these things called crews. This idea that, you band together maybe with people on your street or people in the tavern to protect one's own against the sort of the mercenary flaming fist, which is sort of the unofficial guard, essentially, sort of got into power along with the watch.
Mercenary guards that have become a paid guard that's like, paid force that became a guard, which is a bit dodgy.
A bit dodgy. And then, of course, their leader is the Grand Duke, so the person that sits on the Council of Four, essentially, and refuses to let go of their leadership of the Flaming Fist. And you're like, God, this doesn't sound good. All these things like, this isn't good. But what I quite like looking at the Gazetteer in this sort of introductory paragraph, it says like drugs and poisons sit on shelves alongside tinctures and remedies. So literally it's so open, the crime in this place, and people don't shy away from it. People just do it, and you don't hide it away, which I thought it's very different to other places that we've personally explored in D&D lore.
It's definitely got a bit more of grit and grime to it, which I quite like. Waterdeep is so guild heavy, like the guilds are there's a load of red tape. And when I remember playing Waterdeep Dragon Heist, it gives you whole things about like when you get the pub, the guilds might come. There's a whole set of little mini campaigns I use where it was all about the guilds coming to see you, and then, all right, you're going to need a pub license. Oh, you need to get some work done to this building. You need a building license, and you're going to need this. And it's all very formal, but overly bureaucratic.
Yeah.
And then you go to somewhere like the complete extreme opposite, like, but Luskan, but in a similar way, where that's all about the mix between the pirate kings and queens who run it, but then the real people who run it, who are the host tower, which is all these wizards in the host tower. And it's this balance of sort of seeming anarchy run by piratical people. Imagine a scene from a tavern in Pirates of the Caribbean. You kind of imagine that's what it's always like, these sort of port towns where there's music playing and it's all a bit revelrous. And you can imagine it still being a bit grimy, but in a sort of more upbeat, fun way. Do you know what I mean?
Everything's a little bit more cheery. It's like,
But Baldur's Gate just sounds freaking droll. like
miserable.
Just miserable, apart from, just these uber rich people in their palantirs or whatever they're called being pulled along by held aloft by people as they move through the town, whilst the waifs just watch getting beat down by the flaming fists, who are not a very nice bunch of people. And you're just kind of like, and then the only other guild is the guild, which is basically the Thieves Guild.
Yeah, it unites cut purses, loan sharks, killers, thugs, con artists, grave robbers, cat burglars, and every other type of criminal in the city. It's all under one banner.
Yeah. And then on top of that, you've also got one of your biggest threats is Balspawn, which is one of the Dead Three, which is the gods that really exist in this town over any other are Baal and
Bane,
and I forget the third one.
Murkrul, I think.
Which is murder, death, and
bones.
Lovely.
yeah, it's like, oh, we'll come visit Baldur's Gate.
Yeah, exactly. Hey! Yeah, so you don't get Volo's Enchiridion here. You get a Gazetteer, but it's not written, as we were saying, like what's nice about the Dragonized one is it was written from the perspective of Volo. So you've got this very person giving it a bit of colour and flavour, which I think we like from the Planescape books. I've been liking going back and reading those for some reason recently, and having someone talk to you in a really like interesting way. But this comes across very like it's all a bit dark.
Well, dark and dry, absolutely. Because obviously we've been using D&D Beyond because that's our easiest way of accessing these books. But also I do have the copy of the Descent into Avernus. So I went back just before the recording just to look at it. And interestingly enough, there's not a lot of images in the Gazetteer stuff. And it's obvious when you look at it in the D&D Beyond stuff as well. But suddenly you have a lot of columns. D&D, we always know in books, it's double columned, fine. But usually there's an image on every page just to break up the text. In the Gazetteer, there's several pages, which are just 2 columns consistently. Like I'm looking at it now, probably 6 pages before you get to an image. Now, obviously, that's fine. So most people can read through that. But when it's dry text, when there's nothing interesting, you do need to break it up a little bit with a map or with a diagram, because they do have some really nice images here of like the various locations. There's 2, like, what I didn't realize this was the Baldur's Gate. There's like some of the images are just a double spread, which is very beautiful, actually. And then you get to see the full image of like, I don't know, someone being murdered, someone being robbed as well. So yeah, instantly, I didn't even know that until I looked at it at the physical copy, and I was like, oof, a little bit hard going.
Yeah.
Baldur's Gate itself as a sort of location, I actually struggled to imagine it until I looked at the big map.
The wider map was really good. I totally agree, because they have the zoomed in just Baldur's Gate inner city and a little bit of the surrounding. And then when they bring in something Hawk Hill.
Dusthawk Hill, yeah.
That you then get this overview of, you're like, oh, so it's a bit like Hamburg.
Yes.
In the sense that it's a port city down the river a little bit, inland slightly.
The population of Baldur's Gate is 125,000. And I don't know about you, I always struggle to be like, what does that mean? So I had a quick look at UK places.
Bath is 90,000. I know that.
Yeah, I was going to say, so Bath, 90,000. So similar size to that. A place near me, Accrington, is about 120,000. So I was like, oh, it's as big as Accrington.
Is in Accrington Stanley, the football club?
Yes, exactly that. Yeah,
I know that from Accrington Stanley 4, West Brom 0. If anyone's old enough to know what I'm talking about.
Well, speaking of football, so I've been watching Welcome to Wrexham. Wrexham is only 60,000, so it's roughly about...
Wrexham's tiny.
Yeah, Wrexham's tiny, but I was like, it's double the size of Wrexham.
It's 2 Wrexhams. Yeah,
2 Wrexhams, roughly around that.
I can't believe that Wrexham is now the international standard to... It's Wales, isn't it?
It's Wales, yep.
Wales is the international standard of measurement for countries, and now Wrexham, thanks to Rob and Ryan going and buying a football team, it's now... I've been to Wrexham. It's nearby. It's my stepdad's local tennis club is in Wrexham.
Oh, well, maybe that will be bought by a Hollywood team. Just going back to the map, I really struggle to be like, wait, so is Baldur's Gate on a hill? So in my head, I had it as like a huge big hill, and the upper city at the top, and then the lower city, and then the outer city, and it was just almost ringed around a hill. But actually, it's separated. Because the Dusthawk Hill confused me completely. Because that's technically on the outside of it. I found that was one of the more interesting bits of history. This idea of the Dusthawk Hill is like a protected place because these Dusthawks, they're an endangered species, and the founder Baldurian, that was his favourite bird, so we must protect the bird at all costs. And then people were like, but we go on that hill to trap food and prey, and this is unfair. And so that sort of niggling attentions, I quite liked that. I thought that was an interesting little side history, which is not necessarily important, but it's like, oh, you're not allowed on this hill. You're not allowed to camp on this hill. You're not allowed to do anything because it's a protected area, which we've not come across in D&D at all, about having protected areas for wildlife before, which I thought was quite interesting.
The national parks. John Muir would be happy. That's it.
You also have places like the Worms Crossing.
I love that. That's so cool. One of my top places, yeah.
And that's got a nice little image in the Gazetteer as well. So this idea of a crossing where it is the HQ of the Flaming Fist, where you cross the first part of the bridge, and then there is the HQ, and then you cross the next part of the bridge to carry on into the outer city. But if you get stuck there, you're kind of just stuck at the HQ for as long as you need to be across this very wide
river.
Oh, how do you pronounce the river? Is it
Chionthar? Chonthar.
Chonthar.
I don't know.
It's either Chonthar or Shyantar, I think. The river.
The river.
And this river obviously connects to sort of the wider oceans as well. And again, there's a little bit of history about like the other settlements around. So like Baldur's Gate obviously has connections to Waterdeep and Neverwinter. Elturel, who is, again, comes into play in the actual adventure itself.
It's down the river a little bit, isn't it, basically?
There's a sort of little bit of tension because it's seen as sort of like a good place, and there's lawlessness of Baldur's Gate is, they're not too keen on that. But then you've got like connections to Chult and stuff like that. So it's a good...
No, it's just a Kalimshan with the little Kalimshan, which I think is an interesting little story. Because Kalimshan is not somewhere we travel to greatly in current setting of D&D. Kalimshan does come up in, I only know it through Drizzt novels, in number 7 or something like that. They go to Kalimshan.
In the Drizzt novels.
Yeah, and it's like you go down south, it's quite far south, and you go round the bay, this big bay, and then you're into Kalimshan, I believe, down there. But just interesting to just have a little touch of some other area as well in there, which kind of, I think, could lead you on if you wanted to go on to that. That was all.
And there's talk of connections to obviously Candlekeep as well. Like if you're on your way to Candlekeep to give in a rare book, well, you might be able to find it in Baldur's Gate, but obviously for a high price. And so again, if you were going to do the Candlekeep anthology, that could be something there as well. If it's like a quick primer, perhaps. So it's got all the bases for a good starting place, but in the Gazetteer itself, as we sort of quickly discussed before we started recording, there are lots and lots of locations, which is very detailed in this Gazetteer. And admittedly, obviously, we haven't read The Sentinel of Venice, and probably we should at some point. From my understanding is that we don't spend too long in Baldur's Gate before we have to head off to save the rest of the world, because obviously this place is not Baldur's Gate, but the Eterals is fallen into Avernus. So there's a lot of detail here to be like, if you want to do adventures here, here's all the information. But compared to Waterdeep Dragon Heist, where it's like, you're not leaving this place, but here's all the stuff you can do. And then it feels more interconnected that instantly. And it definitely feels like that in the writing for this Gazetteer. Just
to put it back to the Waterdeep, I think the thing that it has, why it's a lot more dense here, is that the Waterdeep Dragon Heist book is very much like it's all in Waterdeep. So there's so many other locations that are just brought up and around in the rest of the book. So what it's priming you on really is overviews of like the Guild Ward or the Clerk's Ward and stuff like that. And it's giving you more of an overview, whilst there are lots of little interesting places throughout the whole of the book. So I think that's why this is a bit more dense. I think if you were someone coming to start, again, I always look at this from like a beginner DM sort of point of view, is that what's good is this is like, there's loads of little things that you could be like, all right, I'll take a city landmark one. Do we really like the image of the Hall of Wonders or something like that? And it just gives you a nice little like cutaway 3D of it. It looks really cool, gives you enough to give you something to work from. There's no maps, but it gives you a nice little description of it. Talks about inventions wrought in Gond's name, so one of the gods of invention and sort of creativity. And then it has workshops, and it just kind of gives you loads of things that you can just take from that and inspire you to create. I don't know, you might go there to collect or steal a particularly precious or rare artifact that you need for a little quest. And it just could be a fetch quest from an NPC, which it gives you a couple in this, such as
a Nine Fingers Keen,
which
is a great name. One thing I wish they had, because they do have lots of random encounter tables for depending on various circumstances, but I do wish there was more, and maybe this is more of a Tasha's thing or a Vola's thing, where obviously you can generate names, but I want more names like, Nine Finger Keen, like No Thumbs Harry or something like that, like be able to create quick NPCs that have very threatening names just to get into the theme of Baldur's Gate. In the Gazetteer yourself, you've got like 19 locations in the upper city, 22 in the lower city, and then in the outer city there's 12 like places you can go. But the key thing, which passed me by on the first reading of this, which is kind of significant to Baldur's Gate, is that you can't necessarily travel easily between the upper city and the lower city because of the sort of enforced class system. You have the original sort of oldest families within Baldur's Gate called the Patrias, which are the wealthy class. They are they make their money. They have always lived in the upper city. They do their business in the upper city, and it's very unlikely, as you were saying, for them to come down to the lower city. If they're going to come, they're going to be coming with guards. They're going to become protected because they are targets for robbers and thieves, etc. Now, you, as a normal pleb of the Forgotten Realms and even of sort of Baldur's Gate, it's unlikely you'll be able to get into the Upper City, but there are ways to do it. Either you've got their patronage, you've got a letter of recommendation, you're a trader of some sort, or you pay 5 copper. But at the end of the day, as it's sort of getting towards sunset, you have to get out. Otherwise, you are forced out by the Flaming Fist and the Watch. There's nothing more embarrassing than seeing someone rush towards one of the gates, but it's probably less embarrassing than being thrown out. So, I like that as a sort of saying that, oh, they're not supposed to be here, that sort of thing, because you don't have a watch token or anything like that. So, again, that's another thing going, oh, are you going to have to get into a place to steal an artifact from the Hall of Wonders during the night? How are you going to escape that if you don't have a letter of recommendation or a watch token, which are hard to come by?
But these flame fists are pretty easy to bribe from what it says many, many times.
Yeah.
And there's loads of little encounters it has for you, like, doesn't it? There's loads of little tables that you can roll on for, like, your caught at the gates. Do the guard take every single person one by one and really rummage through everything they've got? Or do they come around asking, putting their hand out, basically, and if you give them money, you go through? Or are they not looking and you get to run through it? So they've got little tables for all those sorts of things as well.
There's some fun ones which were like, they confiscate all weapons and that's it. Or if they arrest any person who's not able to pay 5 gold, and you're like, wow, or they arrest the poorest looking person. It's
really awful, isn't it? But it's good little things for, like, for your players to come into. Like, have you got 5 gold? And everyone goes through, and the last one's like, oh shit, they've got the money. And they're like, they've got the money, they're in there. Yeah, mate. Yeah. Come with me.
We don't like troublemakers here in Baldur's Gate.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a little adventure for your characters.
These little encounters, they're not all about fighting. There's some really good ones in the Upper City talking about, like, asking for quests and getting letters to go to certain families and all that sort of thing. And the little tiny, like 2-line quest hooks, which I love as a way to, like, it's not a fight. Because that's the thing. Sometimes you have these encounters like, 3d6 farmers. Well, you've given me the stat block, so presumably they're going to do something. But what was quite good in the Beyond Baldur's Gate, those encounters, not only do you generate, like, who you encounter, but, like, the reason for heading to Baldur's Gate, which I thought was a quite nice way to pair. So you're not constantly, because I feel sometimes as a DM, when you're rolling this stuff, you go, okay, there's 1d6 pilgrims that are coming, and you're like, right, well, we're going to kill them. I don't know. It just feels like you've got to roll a 1d6 of them. Why are we encountering them? So I like how there is a d10 table for, like, why are they heading?
Yeah, and harmless interactions, and having them split, as you said, like harmless interactions, random ones, denizens that you meet, threats, and it's kind of, it's good that it's giving you all of them, because sometimes it will just go, here's 10 encounters, and it's like, well, I've rolled a bad one, and you're like, I don't have time for a bad one. Can I share my favourite one, though?
Yeah, please, yeah.
A pallid maid wearing the livery of House Bormore stumbles into party, whispers, not shellfish, and passes out.
I did think that was a quite good one.
It just made me laugh.
In terms of trading and what the economy is like, this place is obviously a big commercial hub, because obviously it's along the river. So it's mostly known for its fishing. It's known for its for dyes as well, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, the dyes thing was like a nice little nod to, like, particular trade of this area, because it makes it feel a bit more real.
And I don't know if this happened in the Dragon Heist Gazetteer. It talks about the Baldur's Gate crest and what it symbolizes.
With the boat on the water, and how people don't know what it actually means anymore as well.
But it has 2 meanings. Or people are trying to, it's that sort of thing where they're trying to justify, actually it means calm waters and not piracy and all that sort of thing. I like that as here's the bit, because it talks, obviously we had the tiny bit about the history of Baldur's Gate, which I think is actually quite succinct, which is a bit of a relief, I thought. And this idea of why it's called Baldur's Gate, this idea that Baldur comes back to his hometown of Grey Harbour, goes, I'm going to use my money to build a gate around us. And then they're like, cool, we'll call it Baldur's Gate. And roll credits,
When you said, is there that in Waterdeep? There are bits of that. Waterdeep does go quite into all the factions a lot more. So it talks about all their crests actually quite a lot, because it talks about the Flaming Fist, because there's a lot of factioning, guild joining in that game. So there's a bit more on that. The thing that I think we're pulling on there, which is the fact of not giving you, here's the factual history, right? That was made by Jeff in 20 Jeff and put a picture of Jeff on it, and that's because Jeff's the best. And then, but no, it's because some people go, well, some people see Jeff as an evil character and some people see Jeff as this. And I like that ambiguity. It makes it feel much more real, like it is in all cities that we live in.
The other thing to mention, because I was like, Baldur's Gate, so there's only one gate, right? Obviously there isn't. There's loads of gates.
And none of them are called Baldur's Gate.
One of them is.
Where is it? I couldn't find it on the map. I was looking at the map and I was like, I can't find this actual Baldur's. Oh, there it is. It's to the upper city.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's in the upper city, right?
That's why I was being an idiot. That's what I was like looking through it and I was like, oh, they must have changed the name. I was like, I couldn't find it.
Sorry, that's really funny because I literally just zoomed in and it's the first thing that comes up. Yeah, there's a couple of gates around the upper city and then the others around the lower city.
I forgot about those.
So there's 9 gates that separate all the districts from Baldur's Gate. And what's interesting, again, a little fact I missed in the first reading is that Baldurians, if they don't wish to reveal a crew affiliation or family affiliation to a hostile audience, they'll describe themselves by the nearest gate to their home. Which again, then you get stuff like Gondor Gator or the Dragon Gator, and I just thought that was just a little bit different and cool.
Yeah.
And all these gates are also slightly different in terms of getting into the upper city, but also there's ones that are specifically for the upper city people, or there's ones that are particularly for merchants, etc. And so depending on which gate you go to, you might need to do a bit more bribing. You might be able to sneak through on certain days, all that sort of thing. And I just, again, it's not too complex in that sense, but there's a history behind each of the gates. Like Dragon Gate, for example, used to apparently have the head of a black dragon on the top of it. Obviously no longer there, but there's now a stone statue of it. And there's rumors that if Baldur's Gate was ever to be attacked, it would spew poison or acid.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's only one gate. The other 9 are undefended.
Yeah, exactly. You better hope they come from the north.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's not as good as the statues of Waterdeep, is it? Just one dragon that kind of just spews acid in one direction. We'll just walk around this. You know, I mean, I can imagine this whole army lining up and it's like, we're going to put our biggest show on. And they just watch and wait for it to run out and go, okay, cool, thanks. And we'll walk in now. I like Tumbledown, also talking about edges of towns and like stuff. It's a very simple 1-sentence thing. I tried to just find it again. Off by itself, overlooking the river, this perpetually foggy neighborhood hosts the Cliffside Cemetery. And you're like, in that one sentence, I've got it all. The name Tumbledown, you think it's always foggy, it's got cemeteries, it's like your mini Dark Souls room area. Do you know what I mean? Well, or Bloodborne sort of area kind of thing is kind of what I think of. A bit like, you know, the gates when it's going up to Edward Scissorhands' house or the Addams family house, you know, on Cliffgate. And then you go through and everyone's all a bit more muggy and foggy and it's all a bit going on. I could just feel it. And I just thought for something that's very verbose, one of the sentences that when I was reading it, I was like, this is one sentence that actually does a lot for me.
So just to name all those gates, because I've got them up here, why not?
Get ready to write these down to make your own D12 tables. How many are there? 10 or? Okay, 10.
There's 9 in total. So we have the Black Dragon Gate, which I said it has that sort of black dragon face on it. The Citadel Gate, which is the only entrance to the Watcher's Fortress. So that's supposed to be the City Watch at the top in the upper gate. The Patria Gates, which are the gates for the rich and wealthy people. So you got Gon Gate, the Heap Gate, the Manor Gate, the Sea Gate. There's also different neighborhoods as well in that upper city as well, like the Citadel Streets, the Manorborn, which is all where all the fancy houses are, the temples as well. And then you have the Wide, which is the big market space. It's why people would probably go to the upper city during the day. And then in the lower city, we have Baldur's Gate, which is the oldest and least impressive of the city gates, but it remains at the city's heart. The Basilisk Gate is statue-lined gate connects the lower city to the Great Coastway, stretching through the majority of the outer city, and then the southeastern towards Am, Tereth, and Kalashan. And Cliff Gate, that is the sort of foggy one that you were talking about, the tumble-down neighborhood one.
I also like the name of their market. As an architect, I have to look at lots of city plans as well because we do urban design, and a big fan of the Wide as a space because it reminds me a lot more. I don't know if anyone's ever been. Have you been to Siena in Tuscany?
No, I have not, unfortunately.
Have you seen the Quantum of Solace movie? There's a bit in it where there's a horse race going on, and it's a horse race in a square. In a city like that, and it's really cool. It's an amazing feat because it's like literally people just packed in this town square I mean, to give it a London equivalent, it's probably just as big as Covent Garden without the Covent Garden bit in the middle.
In the centre, yeah.
It's not that big, and there are horses racing around it. It's absolutely wild. But the Wide reminds me of that sort of hilltop architecture that you get in like Italy and stuff, where the town squares are never actually a square. They are a shape that is formed around naturally. And I quite like that little bit of appreciating the urban design choices there, because some of like Waterdeep's very much New York. It's very organized, and there's sort of Broadway sort of going across, diagonally across it and stuff like that. But I just liked it, and I liked how it's just called the Wide.
The Wide is an easy place, yeah. It's not the so-and-so marketplace as we often get in there.
Just nice little, again, just little idiosyncrasies that I enjoy. Yeah.
And then towards the end of the Gazetteer, we had those character backgrounds, which I sort of mentioned. And there's 14 that we've seen before.
Oh, yeah.
But they are with a Baldurian twist to it. And I quite, again, they don't add anything necessarily new. All it does is just sort of ties in like, oh, you're probably part of the Flaming Fist, or you know X, etc. And you know this, that, and the other.
I mean, the Charlatan's a great one, particularly for Baldur's Gate, because of that long lost heir business.
Yes.
Criminals and all those are very obvious. I just think that was very particular to it. I quite like that. The Faceless, which was new for this, which is kind of interesting because it kind of fits a little bit like how they've made Nine Fingers, because they mentioned that she's so averagely looking that she's got a face that you don't remember, which is kind of actually what has made her a great thief. Which I always think is they always make that joke that Roger Moore used to say about Bond is like, he's a spy, but everyone knows who he is. Because it's like, he turns up in any bar and they go, oh, Mr. Bond, shaken not stirred. Yes, perfect, thank you. And that's like, that's a crap spy. It's not spying. And all other movie spies are genuinely very attractive. And so therefore not sitting in the corner, like hiding away. So I appreciate it. But then the Faceless is similar, is that being you are, you can never be a hero, whether due to your class, your people, your family, or your sins. Something about you prevents you from effectively pursuing the path you've chosen, even so that doesn't stop you. You've left your old face behind, taking on a new persona, becoming something more.
Dun, dun, dun.
I've had people use that in games. It's a good one. It makes you think of Fjord from Critical Role Season 2.
Yep.
Don's a completely different persona, which is impersonating, is it Yandrin? Have I remembered that out of nowhere?
It's like his commanding officer, right?
Old commanding officer. And then, and the joke was all the time he kept slipping into that British accent every so often, didn't they? And they were like, wait, is he doing this on purpose, sort of thing? So that was a good faceless one.
Yeah, you've got a D10 of suggestions in the table there. And I think as a player, because it's something that I would intrigue you, but I'm very bad at keeping secrets as a person. So I definitely think it would be a challenge if you were going to role play this, because there's some of these like, flamboyant spy or brigand, a scoundrel with a mask guise, a vengeful spirit, impersonation of another hero, which could be quite fun as well. If that other hero turns up to Baldur's Gate. But it's just something I would, it is, you've given the perfect example here of Ford. And it's that idea that you could definitely play it off either as an NPC or as a player character, that idea that there's something not 100% about this person.
I mean, the thing is that the great thing about it being a game is that you've got the double sort of meta thing of like, oh, is that them just mucking up the accent? Is that them just being themselves and forgetting what their character's about? And then you can slowly build it more in and be a bit more overt about your other persona, or have your DM bring people in that know you from your previous life or something like that.
It's a very wild cultural reference, I appreciate, but one of the many episodes of The Apprentice where there's a woman trying to get people to come into an art gallery. She's just like, would you like to come? And people going, no, thank you. She goes, okay. And as soon as they pass away, she went, like her face completely dropped, and then would go back into sort of what I call Barbie mode,
Sales mode,
exactly.
We've all had to do that.
That's how I see it. It's like, you might have the like, goodbye. And then you're like,
in my mind, it's the EastEnders hug.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? So they go, so it's like, I love you, hug. And then they go,
eyes crossed. Dun, 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 dun. I think that's a good addition. And it's just all these backgrounds. If someone goes, oh yeah, I really want to play this, goes, oh, actually, we're thinking of doing a Baldur's Gate game. Yeah. Does these features work for you? Do you want to be part of Baldur's Gate, or do you want to be someone coming into it? So there's two ways about doing it. And then the final bit is something I've never seen before in Gazetteer. I'm sure we've had them in other books, but this idea of a dark secret. There's 4 different sort of dark secrets that affect it could be an individual character or it could be the whole party itself. But you have, like, maybe you are part of a conspiracy in Baldur's Gate. Maybe you're at fault of a murder. Maybe you were doing a heist, or maybe you were doing a coup.
I love that. That's my favorite. Yeah.
And it gives a good description about what each of those entail, a table to what your role is and the consequence, and then also a table to be like, who knows about it, which I love. This idea that someone knows what you did and consequences are coming on the horizon.
And you could play that both ways, or you could have characters in there who maybe are the one who knows the dark secret of someone more powerful as another way. Like, you witnessed the Duke murder someone, or you overheard someone discussing a coup against the Duke, and you are the only one that knows, and do you do something about it? You could play it both ways, I think, which could be interesting.
There's enough that ties you into getting your hands a little bit dirty, so you're not necessarily that's what I kind of came to this, is that compared to, and obviously I know we're always comparing it to Waterdeep, compared to Waterdeep, which is like, we are heroes. Here it's like, we're morally flawed people.
Yeah. That's the thing, like, Waterdeep Dragon Heist is, I wouldn't say it's like we're heroes, but we're very much bumbling heroes is the kind of vibe. It's definitely a lighter hearted theme. Definitely. Yes. It's Mission Impossible, James Bond, silliness.
Yes.
Whilst Baldur's Gate, the actual thing, you end up in hell. So it's not a happy place. You know, Baldur's Gate is technically a happy place in comparison to where you actually end up in that. Yeah,
it is definitely, as we said at the beginning, everyone is out for themselves, and so should your characters be as well.
And maybe that's the sort of like artistic sort of like meta commentary of it, is that Baldur's Gate is very similar to the Avernus. It's all about making, you know, there's a serious hierarchy. I don't know. You could play on that.
Yeah, when you've got that Parliament of Peers as well, and the Council of Four, along with, like we talked about, the sort of all these religions that we sort of mentioned. There's no one religion that's like, oh, we definitely don't worship up here. Everyone's welcome, but there's definitely obviously like the cult of three.
Oh yeah,
they're frowned upon. Coming at the end of it and reading it, I'm like, okay, there's bits of it I've really enjoyed and found interesting, but this is so unlike my experience of the Baldur's Gate 3 game.
Is that because you've been playing it with different other people?
Well, I think so, but I mean, also, admittedly, I haven't got to actually Baldur's Gate, so it feels like we're just a bunch of heroes who are trying our best. There's definitely some morally grey heroes, and when you find out some of the backstories about some of the companions, you're like, wait, what? But they don't seem like selfish or out for themselves. Apart from, obviously, Astarion.
But he does it in such a charming way that it's sort of, oh, Astarion.
What a rogue, you know. Astarion. Yeah, of course you can bite people. That's fine.
Oh, so cute.
Oh, Astarion. Yeah, but that's what I mean. Like, to go from my own little bit of an experience of like playing Baldur's Gate 3 and going, oh yeah, well maybe we should read the Gazetteer. It'll be interesting to see what happens when we get to the city. And I'm like, oh my God.
It's a long time since I played Baldur's Gate 1 and 2. I tried playing again and it was bit difficult, which actually starts in Candlekeep, the first one, and then you end up in Baldur's Gate. It is much more grimier, and I think the older world was a little bit grimier. Do you know what I mean? It was a bit more sword and sorcery, because I remember someone talking about the original D&D. I think it was Matt Colville who went through all of the original version, all the versions of D&D from the beginning, and he was talking about the first iteration that came out, Men and Monsters or something like that, I think it was.
Yeah.
And in that, it says this is a game away from high fantasy, away from the ideas of Lord of the Rings and stuff like that, and only literally mentions like Conan the Barbarian and other sword and sorcery sort of things, like very much more brigands and stuff like that. So Baldur's Gate is born in those earlier times.
Yes.
I mean, that's the sort of thinking, I guess.
Yeah, I guess I was just, like I said, naively surprised by it. And then, like I said, some of it I was like, oh, as we discovered, a bit more dense than what I was expecting from the Gazetteer. Like, I don't know if I would, it's not a primer that I'd give to the players necessarily. I would edit this down quite a bit.
Oh yeah, I'd give them the backgrounds and the secrets bit, and maybe I would probably go through it without them reading it. Do you know, with it there? Do you know what I mean? Maybe
like the history of it at the top, maybe the structure of like how the government is, briefly, like the only thing that we really know from this Gazetteer is that there's the Grand Duke, who is as we sort of said, he's the leader of the Flaming Fist, but he's currently away on a diplomatic mission, leaving the other three sort of in charge. One of them is paralyzed, just had a stroke and can't really speak, but actually she has been in battle with a mind flayer and is struggling with that. I know. So that was really interesting, but again, a very small little bit into like
little bits.
Yeah, and then you have Volo's matriarchal mother of the family also in there.
It's the Van Thampar family,
yeah, and who's plays a big part in that early bit in the Descent to Avernus. And then you have another guy, another duke, who is a wealthy merchant who was been burnt too many times, so he's keeping his investments back and is living the life of luxury, which I find is hilarious. Yeah. So I got a very incompetent council going on just now.
Which does lead you into a lot, again, that whole thing of being the DM. Here's loads of little things for you to play with. The one that I was going to say is that I got Volo's Guide to the North recently. Reading that, the information was much less dense, and it was a different way of putting it. I might go back and just have a brief. I just thought of it now. I forgot about it.
Well, we could do it for a DM's book club if you send me the PDF.
We could do.
Yeah.
No, it's just like a 140-page book sort of thing.
We could split it up into many, many.
You could. DM's Travel Book Club, Guide to the North, because he's done north, south, east, west. He's done everywhere. He's been everywhere.
Oh, well, that sounds good to me. A spin-off. Because it'll be interesting. Because again, I don't know any of these places per se. All I know is from the adventures, and every so often someone will go, what about Neverwinter? I'm like, oh, there's a big chasm there. That's all I ever say.
Hugh Grant is the Duke.
Yes, yeah. Thank you for indulging me into the Gazetteer, because again, I was like, oh, that's really cool they've released it, and then like, oh, it's nothing like what I thought. Like I said, there's some ideas there. It's nice to have something that is different to Waterdeep. As a comparison stuff, and I do like this idea of having a gazetteer or a primer. But yeah, like I said, I think the overall view is that it's a little bit dry in some places. I definitely would do an edit and then maybe give it to the player. I don't mind the lack of a point of view on it compared to Waterdeep. What I found with the Waterdeep primer, I wasn't sure about the point of view, and then I read that primer and I was like, oh, I actually really like this because I can really tell the character who they are.
Yeah.
And because they obviously are prominent, Volo is a prominent character in Dragon Heist. Whereas here it's like, I don't know who would be unless it's like Nine Fingers Keen that's going to do the point of view.
I think you're right. Maybe it doesn't need to be that, but I just think it's just that, I don't want to put the writers down. I just think when I said it's going back to the 2E stuff and just the language, and I think because there were less images in those days, I think there's more of a need for it. But I think when you're reading 20, 30 pages with probably one or two images per thing. And the thing that's great about the Planescape ones is it breaks it up just with bits of streams of those little ribbony things, which is just enough actually just to make the page not feel daunting.
But also like quotes from places.
Quotes. Yeah, really just like good graphic design. 1994, they did it better than they did with Baldur's Gate, I think, in some ways, a little bit. But it's also just the spirit of the voice is really just brings you in, and it just is talking to you in a way that's so much more colloquial. It has all those little words in it, but it's just, I don't know. I think it even gives you a hard time, doesn't it? It's like, you think rule of threes, you think, well, rule of fours over here? Well, you'd be an idiot to think so. And the greybeards would be telling you this. And you're kind of just, it's a fun, jovial, enjoyable experience to read. And I don't see why that's a problem.
No, I mean? Not a problem at all. If you're coming from Baldur's Gate 3 and you see this on D&D Beyond as a free thing, should you read it?
I would say if this is your first, if you're like, I played Baldur's Gate 3, I've never played D&D, but my gosh, I've had such a great time. Do not read this book.
Yeah.
Read this book.
It helped me because I was like, oh, because when it came up with like some of the terminology comes up in the game, I'm like, oh, I know what that means now. But I was a bit like, oh.
No, I would be like, this is the worst thing to put out. That requires a Volo's spoken word. Welcome to Baldur's Gate. This is so dark and grimy. Blah 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 blah. Here's emotion. That's what you need to get people in. Not and there's the Tower of Om. Now you probably don't know who Omd is, but we're going to give you a.
We're not going to tell you too much about it.
We're going to give you a brief description of the Pantheon, which is the thing that pisses me off the most about the DM's guide. It's like, hey, want to design your own D&D adventure? Let's start with the gods. Okay.
Let's start. Big brain. Yeah.
Big brain time.
Big brain, God time. Yeah, I think ultimately I found it interesting, but yeah, unless Baldur's Gate 3 hadn't come out or I hadn't been playing it with obviously yourself and our friends, I don't think I would have I don't think I would have ever read it.
No.
I don't think there's been any impetus to, and I'm interested to read Descent into Avernus now, but I'm already not feeling good about it. If you see what I mean, I'm not. I don't know.
Watch anyone play it because I've never. I saw that High Rollers did one, but I didn't. I just missed it. I didn't watch it, but like
I've seen a couple of actual plays because they did a whole sort of big event for it.
That's what I mean. I remember it being there was a lot going on when it came out. People because it was right at the peak of the sort of pandemic, I think, wasn't it? And so people were quite into
looking
it.
for something different, but yeah, I don't know. I will say though, the alt cover is spectacular. It looks fantastic on it. Like, look at that on the back.
That back page. That piece of artwork is freaking cool.
Well, as we sign off, is there anything you'd like to plug?
Yeah.
Is there anything? Yes. Okay, great. Well, what would you like to plug then, my friend?
What I'll plug is Fueled by Chaos is now what I'm called. I've changed Hazard Stripes into one. I've merged what I was doing with Bowie's in with my Warhammer. Is it the best idea ever? Who knows? Probably crazy, but I've done it because it makes my life easier because I can't be managing 2 YouTube channels at the same time because I it's not the way my brain works. So I just have to accept that if it's worse for it's better for me. So that's kind of what I've done. But it's Fueled by Chaos. You just find it at Fueled Chaos on YouTube, on Twitter, and Instagram. It's Fueled_Chaos. And I think it speaks to me, to me and my personality. Dragon's Duel will be coming back on there as well. We're organizing. And then my Kickstarter, we mentioned.
Yeah, your Kickstarter. Have you got any more Necromunda stuff, or is that on the back burner?
Yeah, no, I've got Tale of Four Gangers, which I'm editing. I'm 49 minutes through hour and a half of edit, but I think it's probably going to be only about an hour and 10 minutes long, so I'm pretty close on that. And I've done getting all the photos and everyone. Oh, Taylor, surprise, is talented at everything, isn't she?
Who
would have known?
Who knew?
Yeah, but everyone's been very talented on it and done some really nice paintings. There's lots of painting on that one. So if people are interested in just seeing some nicely painted models, there's a lot of little model painting things on there and some tips as well. We were rolling out with the tips for painting, by the way. So not to spoil it too much, but enough about me.
Okay,
who, what, why, where?
Who am I? Thank you for asking. My name is Fiona. I use she, her pronouns. I am an improviser, a slight voiceover person, and a podcaster. It's January. Hooray. Why? I don't know either. Here we are. Where? I'm so glad you asked. So where is What Am I Rolling, which is a twice monthly tabletop RPG one-shot podcast. We do lots of different systems. The other thing I started doing is Too Long Didn't Read Tabletop RPGs, which is a stream for accountability reasons where I get to read through a quick start of a different RPG system, and that's been going very well. I'm starting to do that a bit more regularly. And that's it for the moment. Just tootling along, hoping for the best, really. And yeah, 2024 is going to be a big year for us, both individually and obviously creatively. And I'm just really looking forward. So if you fancy reaching out to DM's Book Club, if you've got like a supplement you want us to check out, either official or if you've got a third-party one. Obviously, I know Wizards have recently got some new third-party content on the D&D Beyond stuff, which looks really cool, to be fair to them.
There is some fun stuff. Yeah, the Grim one looks really good.
There's a Lairs one, there's a whole campaign. So yeah, so we'll be checking those out anyway. But if you're like, oh, you should check out so-and-so's work or etc., give us drop us the email, or you could give us a quick mention on social media as well. And also, come check out the Discord as well. That's it. That's us for now. So I know we're like, oh, right. Right, we better go back to work.
Oh yeah, I know. I'm like trying to do something.
Like, all right. Well, with all that out of the way, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you
on the flip
side. Bye bye.